Good morning, and welcome to the Brownsburg Seventh-day Adventist Church on this, the 10th day of February, right? 2024. And as you would suggest, there's no better place to be, right? There's no better place to be than right here, having Sabbath school and church with us, right? No better place to be. So welcome, everybody. It's good to see everybody. Okay, so here's what we have today. So you guys can be thinking, well, let's talk a little bit about your week. And specifically, for a reason, I want to know what your hobbies are. Okay? What are your hobbies? We'll talk about that, and there's a reason. And then, as Christians, I want us to talk a little bit about a virtues of virtuous life, and also, what does discernment mean? What does the term discernment mean? Virtuous life and discernment. So we'll check in on those. I've got a little survey that we'll talk about. And then we'll do the lesson. The lesson, we're studying, what chapter or what book are we studying? Psalms. We're studying Psalms. Okay. I want to make sure I had the right lesson. It's Psalms, okay? So we're going to look at Psalms 12, Psalms 18, Psalms 9, Psalm 82, all right? So we got a whole bunch of things lined up. That's what we're going to do. Unless you guys want to do something different. All right, well, let's move on. All right, so how was your week? On Thursday night, this past Thursday night, it was my wife and I's wedding anniversary. That's what I was gonna say. How many would you guys guess? Would you guys guess more than 20? Yes. Yeah. 37. Okay, it was 37. It was number 37. And so, yeah, it was all good, It was very interesting. When we first got married, we lived kind of right in the middle of the city in Broad Ripple, and so we ended up having dinner at Mama Corolla's, which is kind of in Broad Ripple. And so you're kind of driving by and looking at some of these houses. It's like, oh yeah, our house back then, blah, blah, blah. So it was kind of an interesting drive and trip back through memory lane. So that was one of the things I did this week. How about you guys? What'd you do?
It was my birthday this week.
No way. More or less than 37?
More.
Okay. Happy birthday. So, did you blow out any candles? No.
I did go to Bread Basket in Danville.
Very good.
For lunch.
Very good.
And I wanted a muffin
Uh-huh.
to look like a cake, but they didn't have any.
No, they didn't even have that, huh?
So I had to do a song.
Well, hey, everybody should say happy birthday to Rodney, right? Happy birthday, Rodney. Rodney, I tell you what, how long have you been coming here?
About a year and a half.
Year and a half, 2 years. And I tell you what, being up here and having Rodney in our Sabbath school class has been an absolute treasure. And I really mean that. You kind of drive in and quite actually you kind of visualize who's going to be here, okay? Who's going to be here? And Rodney, you are first and foremost in my vision because you've always studied your lesson. You have excellent comments, so your participation and presence is so valuable, sir. Thank you, and happy birthday. Okay, all right, very good. Other stuff for this week.
I did yard work
Yeah.
this year.
Who would have thought? Well, you guys have a new house. So could you find yard work? Very good. So we had yard work, right? Other stuff this week. What did you do this week?
I
What's that? You started a new job.
It's going great. It's very challenging, but I'm learning a lot.
Is
and
it good?
It's really good.
So
It's
the
a-
first week, all the first week jitters are over, and
Not really. We'll see next week.
well, very good. Anything else this week? All right. Well, I tell you what. Let's bow our head and we'll get started with our morning manna. Thank you, Lord, for letting us come together today in your sanctuary. Please be with each and every one of us. Thank you for safe travels throughout this week, and your guidance and your presence be with us now. Amen. Okay. Let's talk about hobbies, and here's why. Okay, here's why. So, my father-in-law is currently taking care of his wife, and she is in mid to later stage dementia. Okay, and so for him it is, as you can imagine, it is kind of a 24/7 job. And so my wife and her two sisters say, they go over as much as they can. They've kind of got set days when they go over, and they try to push him out of the house. And maybe, I don't want to be too cruel, but maybe he doesn't have a lot of hobbies. So it's like, push him out of the house, and then what do you do? It's like, well, now what? So that's why I was really kind of interested to go, what are your collective hobbies and the importance of having a hobby? It's really important. Well, what are your hobbies out there? What do you guys do?
For most of my life, I've been what might be called an armchair model railroader.
No way.
Never built one, but got all the magazines, collect all the railroad memorabilia stuff.
Really? Do you have a little setup, or
No,
you just
never
you
went
just
that-
know
never
you
went
just
that far.
know railroads?
I got a plan,
Yeah.
but it never happened.
Yeah. Okay, railroads. Very good. Railroads. Very good. Other hobbies? Yes, Danielle.
This sounds kind of funny, but I like to work outside, and one of my favorite things to do is pull weeds. I find it very relaxing.
I tell you, if you run out right now, everybody is going, Danielle, if you run out, we can keep your hobby alive.
Yeah, so I like doing that, and I sew, but it's very for myself, not professional at all. Yeah.
Sewing, okay, sewing and weeds, gardening. We'll call it gardening.
Yeah.
Sewing and gardening. Sewing, gardening, railroads. What else? What do you do, young lady? What's your hobby? We'll keep him going back and forth.
So I enjoy cooking.
Cooking.
Yes, and I also enjoy karaoke. So any karaoke?
Who would
Yeah.
like to hear a morning hymn karaoke?
No.
Wouldn't that be nice?
So whenever I get free time, I just look for an instrumental and I just sing, and I enjoy that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Cooking is an interesting hobby. My son, shockingly, he's 26, and he has a full-time job. He's very busy, does all this stuff, but strangely, cooking is one of his hobbies. And so he'll come home he's currently living in our house. He'll come home and like for an hour, he's like, you can't get in his way, and he's making all sorts of stuff, and it's like, wow, this is his way of decompressing. And it's an interesting hobby. It really is. You can tell. Okay. Okay, other hobbies. We're talking about hobbies. Okay? Hobbies that are out there.
My youngest will sit in a room for hours playing with Lego. He'll build things and he'll run them out to me. Daddy, look what it can do.
Yeah.
And it's not just building like brick buildings like I used to do. He look, I can move this and it transforms into this. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. What are you going to do with it? I'm going to take it apart and build something else. I'm like, all right, but he can be left on his own for hours
For doing
and
that.
just gets into it and is so proud of it. And so, I mean, I can think of worse things for a kid to do, but
Yeah,
he loves it.
yeah. Okay, very good.
That creative nature.
Other hobbies that are out there. So, you know, I think it's good. So where's all this going? It would be, you know, for healthy living, as we do get older, it is important, I think, for us to make sure that we do develop hobbies because things change in life. You know, like I said, my father-in-law, he never dreamed his position that he's in, never would have dreamed in a million years. He retired 2 years ago at the age of 82. He was in the insurance business, retired at the age of 82, and I think he had a totally different vision of what that retirement was going to be. Didn't, you know, his hobby was work, I think, quite frankly, and retired and then became pushed into duty to be a full-time caregiver. And now, not a lot of hobbies, and you know, easy to say, hard to do, easy to say, hard to do, but in retrospect, right now, it would be very good if he had a hobby or two, you know? And so that gets me thinking, you know, collectively, all of us, and certainly myself, to go, I've got to make sure I've got, you know, a hobby or two as things progress, you know? Okay, all right. So much for that. Anything else this week? What? Yes.
I had a really neat experience. I have had these on occasion in my life, but I was up at Andrews this week for a class, and I was in the men's room, and a gentleman came in. He wasn't part of my class, and we exchanged a couple words, and I looked at him, I'm like, I know this guy. And so I asked him, have you ever been at the Kokomo Seventh-day Adventist Church? And he said, yeah, many years ago. And I was like, is your name Wool? And so I knew this guy named Wool. He was Sudanese. And so, yeah, his name was Wool. And he couldn't place me for anybody. I was like, my name's Ben, blah, blah, blah. So we were chatting as we were exiting into the hallway. And all of a sudden, his eyes got this big, and he said, Ben!
Really?
And so we figured out that we hadn't seen each other since 2011.
Oh.
So this is a lot of years that have gone by, and so it was just really one of those neat experiences. I've only had it happen a couple times where I've met somebody, you know, greater than 10 years apart, and we actually made that
awesome?
connection. So
Oh, yeah.
that was just a really, really fun experience.
Yeah. Is that awesome?
Yeah.
Awesome. Welcome. It is very good to have you guys here. Are you visitors? Yes. Okay. And where are you visiting from?
We are Venezuelan people.
Okay.
We come from Spanish.
Oh, the Spanish church. Okay, very good.
Maranatha. He's in Speedway.
Oh, and Speedway. Okay, very good. And your names are? What's your name?
Jose.
Jose and? Disela. Jose and Disela, visitors? Excellent. Excellent to have you with us. Thank you for coming. Excellent. Feel free to participate. We highly encourage participation. All right. So where were we? Oh, yes. What does it mean to have a virtuous life? What does it mean to be a Christian and be virtuous? What does virtuous mean? Here's what Webster says. Having or showing moral standards. Moral standards. A virtuous life. So how does that tie into Christians? Very good question. Where do these moral standards come from? The Bible, right? Yeah, from Jesus. When all of us, when all of us kind of march out the door at the end of service, would passersby, would they go, well, there's probably a bunch with no, they're probably not a virtuous bunch, right? If you go by any church, don't you mentally go, probably a virtuous bunch of people, right? Right? You would hope so, right? So we get these virtues from the Bible. What do we do with them? Well, we put them in practice, yeah. Yeah, we don't just stick them in our pocket and go, well. Put them in practice. What is just one example where you would go having or showing high moral standards? Just one example where you would go, this is an example of virtues or a virtuous life. What's one example? Just one. You were
Till death do us part.
You were married for over 50 years, and that was your partner, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Danielle.
I worked at the YMCA daycare for a while, long time ago.
Yeah.
And my oldest, he was maybe 2 or 3, and he was leaving, going home with Dad, and he asked me to like build something with one of the toys or whatever. I'm like, sure, I'll do it. And he left, and so I went and I started building it. And some of the other people were like, why are you doing that? You know, he won't know if you did it or not. So I guess just being honest and following through with what you say you'll do, even if they
Right.
don't see it.
Say what you, yeah. Okay, very good. The virtuous life. You guys ever think about virtuous? Yes.
You ask the question where we learn the virtuous life. And I learned mine from my parents. Not from the Bible, because at that age you don't, just observing my parents, what they taught you, how they taught you, and Christian principles. So my virtue I got from my parents. And of course they got it from the Bible, But it was their duty to teach us as young, to grow up and respect others and have, be moral and all that, continues like that.
Yeah. Do you guys see it as a Christian responsibility to be virtuous? What do you think? I think so, right? I think that's our calling card, right? It's dangerous to paint with a broad brush, okay, but I'll do it anyway. It's dangerous to paint with a broad brush. Back to the example that says, okay, so if I'm in Washington, D.C., and I watch people coming out of Congress, contrast that and think about a virtuous life, okay, and contrast that with people walking out of a church. Maybe I would feel differently about the two, right? I don't necessarily equate that same having or showing high moral standards, okay? The two can be a contrast. All right, so let's move on. Discernment. What is discernment? Did anybody show discernment this week? Discernment is the ability to what? The ability to judge and judge well, to make good decisions. Show good discernment. Virtuous life and discernment. How do those two fit in? So did anybody make any good decisions this week? I guess I did. Okay, somebody did.
And then hopefully full plant-based diet, salt is taboo. So I made a lentil soup.
Uh-huh,
It needed salt,
yeah,
but no way.
yeah.
I discovered that Bragg's aminos did the same thing.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Good discernment there. Very good. Other areas of discernment. Way back in the corner.
Well, I was clicking the TV, looking for something to watch,
Yes.
and I saw something that on one hand interested me, but on the other hand, no, I don't think so. And I was glad that I was able to quickly switch to something else.
What a great example. You can go, we can broaden that discernment and virtuous life into TV, social media, big area of how to live a virtuous life in discernment.
Because sometimes what you see or hear on social media, TV or otherwise, it sticks in your mind and you think about these things when you really don't want to think about them. They play in your mind over and over again.
Yeah. Really good example. And that's kind of what the heart of this discussion was. Our discernment, our ability, and what impedes today, what impedes our ability to have good discernment? Because the whole building block said, we're Christians, we try to live a virtuous life, okay? And then you go, discernment, we try to make really good decisions. Now, what impedes us? You know?
There's a lot of influence around us. People, don't necessarily have the same moral foundation that we do.
Right.
That will make a different decision because the morals are different. Their discernment
Yes.
is going to be different than ours. And when you're surrounded by that, you're kind of pulled along with the current if you're not strong
Yep.
enough to
Yep.
hold it. So
Yep.
I know with my kids, that's the biggest thing.
Oh.
Everybody else is doing it,
Oh,
and they seem to be fine.
And going right along with that, our own hearts naturally are going to go the carnal way.
yep.
And
Yep.
so without having a foundation of God and asking, I mean, we can't even do it on our own. So
Right.
asking God to help us know right from wrong and to have the desire to follow, and have that virtue and getting the strength from him.
Asking God to know what's right and wrong. That never gets out of style, right? That never. No matter from when we're 3 to when we're 103, right? Okay, so that's it for virtuous life. We all live a virtuous life and we have good discernment, right? We got to keep thinking about that. All right, I ran across a survey, and here's what the survey says. Survey shows non-religious Americans, okay? What percent of non-religious Americans do you think there are today? What percent? 10%? 20%?
You're saying that are not?
Non-religious. Okay, so this is good question. Yeah, exactly. U.S. adults are religiously unaffiliated according to the National Public Opinion Reference Survey. Okay, so these are non-affiliated. So non-affiliated can say, I don't have an affinity to a certain church, or I'm agnostic, or I am. It's 20 to 30%, 28%. 28%. So 1 out of every 4 people that you see in the grocery store would be non-affiliated, right? Non-affiliated. So we talk about what are some of the goals that we have for this church, right? And one of the things that we're saying is, one of the things that we need to do is to have a bigger footprint in the community, right? A bigger footprint in the community, and you go, well, there's huge opportunity there when you go, over 1 in 4 people don't claim any affinity towards a religion or God. 1 in 4. And so our impact in the community can be tremendous, right? It's not like, for those of us that have grown up in the church, we were always kind of conditioned to go, oh, the mission work is over there across some ocean in the middle of Albonia. Oh, that's where the mission is, okay? And that's kind of what we were conditioned to. And some of it's society, it's changed here. But that mission, there's a huge mission that we don't have to cross oceans. We just have to cross the street, right? So I think that's one of the things that we'll think about a little bit more coming up, as we wander into 24. So let me finish the survey, then we'll move on. It's the second largest religious group in the survey. 40% said they were Protestant and 20% said they were Catholic. Nuns, okay, the people who said they're not affiliated, the nuns. This gets back to living a virtuous life and discernment, okay? The nuns are less likely to volunteer or vote in elections. Of the U.S. adults surveyed, 17% of the nuns, this is N-O-N-E-S, okay? Make no mistake about it, this is N-O-N. Okay, the null set. The nuns volunteered at a 17% rate compared to 27% of the religiously affiliated group. 39% of the nuns voted in the 22 election versus 51%. So you kind of get a picture of, the quote nuns are people that are just kind of sitting on the sidelines, okay? Sitting on the sidelines. And if you're sitting on the sidelines, there's room to get in the game, okay? There's room to get in the game. And so as we talk about in the future, our ability to have an impact on the community, one of the things that we can do is get the folks on the sideline involved, okay? All right. Hey, I'm reading a book, okay? So it's time to start the lesson. I am reading a book right now. There was a movie out. I didn't see the movie, but it's called The Boys in the Boat. The Boys in the Boat. It is about rowing, okay? It's about rowing. And it's about rowing in 1930s, okay? 1930s. And, this is Super Bowl weekend, right? And there'll be maybe 80,000 people at the game, right? Big game. Well, back in the day, in the teens, 20s, and 30s, who knew? Rowing was one of the largest sporting, it was like the number one sporting event. And they would get over 100,000, this is during the Depression. They would have large rowing events. They would get over 100,000 people to go to a rowing championship. This was in all the news and everything. It was the sport of the day. So it was all the Ivy Leagues, it was all the armed forces, it was University of Washington, Stanford. That was the population, it was the big sport. And so here's where I'm going. One of the things that they talk about, so these are eight men rowing together, okay? And so they say the sweet spot is when all of these people, all 8, get in perfect synchronization for them to row they're getting the right power, they're all matched up in synchron, and that's when they call they're in the swing. They're in the swing. So you've heard the statement, get in the swing of things, right? Well, that's where that comes from. Get in the swing of things. Rodney, get in the swing. And so that's how we'll open up today's lesson will be, let's get in the swing here. Get in the swing as we teach the lesson, all right? We'll all get in synchronized here as we teach the lesson. All right. Hey, how many books are in Psalms? How many? Chapters, yeah, thank you, yeah. How many? 150, right? There's 150 chapters in the Bible. What are some of the topics that are in Psalms? Things like prayers for individuals, right? Praise for individuals for God's saving help. Expressions of confidence in the Lord. So there's about 12 different categories, okay? And so today's lesson, I kind of charted through and went, today's lesson, we're going to cover 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. And here they are. Prayers of the community. So we'll touch on some of the Psalms that will touch about prayers of the community. Another category is hymns that are celebrating God's universal reign. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about concerning the king, the Lord's anointed, the royal psalms. And then there's the last, which is instructional or didactic songs. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. Here we go. All right, Psalms 12:5. Can somebody look up Psalms 12:5? It's our memory verse. While you guys turn, I'll read it. How's that? Psalms 12:5. We're talking about the oppression of the poor. For the oppression of the poor, for the sighing of the needy, now I will arise, says the Lord. I will set him in the safety for which he yearns. Oppression of the poor. Who are the poor? For the oppression of the poor. Are the poor just people without money? What do you guys think?
They could be those who don't have enough money to defend themselves.
Okay, so we'll say one category of poor could be currency. Is that it?
You can be poor in spirit. You can just be beaten down and just worn out and don't have the energy to get up.
Absolutely. Poor in spirit. Poor in wealth, poor in spirit. Any other poor out there? Any other?
That's a good one.
They have no one to love them.
No
Poor
one
in
to
love.
what?
Love.
Love. Absolutely. I didn't think about that one. That's a great one. You can be poor in love and relationship, huh? Excellent. Okay, so for the oppression of the poor, the sighing of the needy, I will arise. I will set him in the safety with which he yearns. So let's just say some of us might be afflicted by being poor today. What does this psalm tell us? If I trust in God, right? I have a relationship. I have somebody that loves me, right? That helps rise me up, right? The lesson starts out by saying, our age is not the only age in which evil, injustice, and oppression raised. The psalmist lived in such a time as well. Sometimes we can kind of go, ooh, we can kind of think, we invented oppression. But that's not the case, right? So, when it says, I will set him up in the safety for which he yearns, what's the time frame for that? We've all had that prayer, right? We've all had that prayer. We have been either poor of money, poor of spirit, poor of relationships. I'm sure there's a lot of other poors out there. How quick was that answered? Or what was the time frame? Because you make that prayer immediate.
So Scripture talks about we have this hope. So the time frame is the hope. It might be immediate, but it might not, but we still have the hope. So
Okay.
that makes it current.
Okay?
I think when you're suffering with a poverty, you feel like there's no way out. And when you take that step to make that prayer, Lord, help me with X, Y, or Z, that's the first step out. And I think now you're not feeling so hopeless. You're not stuck. There's a process starting.
I think it kind of makes you feel like you're moving forward, right?
First step in the right direction.
Yeah,
You're not stuck anymore.
you're not stuck, right? So whose time frame is it that you will, quote, get there? The one who's guaranteeing it, right? It's on God's clock, right? It's his clock that will be raised out of this oppression, right? How do you guys see people get oppressed today? Are we oppressed? Are we an oppressed people? Do you feel oppressed? Kids go to school, okay? Kids go to school. If they come from a Christian home right now, what might that oppression look like in school?
They're being teased about it.
They could get teased. From
Bullied. Kids can get bullied.
they get bullied. So how does this take place? When we go, oh, we kind of know kind of the end result, but how does that oppression happen?
How does sin happen?
In the classroom itself, what do you think happens to these kids today? If you have a kid that's in school, it's not very favorable, right? To go, I pray to God, I try to live a virtuous life. That's probably not mainstream, right? If you're in a public school, right? Okay, let's move on. In Sunday's lesson, we're talking about his awesome power over evil forces. Let's look up Psalms 18. Psalms 18, 1 through 9. if somebody could start reading a few verses for us, Psalms 18. And so the whole meaning here is his power over evil forces.
I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. The cords of death encompassed me, the torrents of destruction assailed me. The cords of Sheol entangled me. The snares of death confronted me.
We'll stop right there. If we can, we'll stop right there. Okay? How about verse 4 and 5, right? That's really graphic, right? The cords of death entangle me. The torrents of destruction overwhelm me. The cords of the grave coiled around. The cords of the grave. Ooh. The snares of death confronted me. Do we feel that way? You ever get to that point in your life when you really feel that way? I think so, right? I think so. You know, it's real easy sometimes to get that tunnel vision where things aren't going well and you can only see a very narrow field, and it's easy for this kind of feeling to set in, right? I'll use my father-in-law as an example. I don't know what it is. You know, if he's in this zone, I really don't have a clue, but you can easily see how it could be there, okay? He's a caretaker 24/7 for a person in late-stage dementia at home with lots of issues. You could easily see the cords of death entangle me, the torrents of destruction overwhelm me. Couldn't you easily see that kind of picture? Right? Okay, so let's move on. So the story doesn't end there, right? It doesn't end there. Who can read on from verse 6?
In my distress, I called upon the Lord and cried out to my God. He heard my voice from his temple, and my cry came before him even to his ears. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations of the hills also quaked and were shaken, because he was angry. Smoke went up from his nostrils, and devouring fire from his mouth. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also and came down with darkness under his feet.
Let's stop right there. So, what's going on there then? We just painted a picture of somebody that's really in a bad position, right? Now what happens?
When he cried out to God.
Cried out for God for help, right?
And God got involved.
God got involved. Verse 7, right? The earth trembled and quaked. The foundations of the mountain shook. They trembled because he was angry. Do we think about God being angry very often? I don't know. What do you think, Jose? When we think about today, do we think enough about God being angry? Say that again, Jose?
Good is love, not angry.
Yeah, because we rightfully so, we go, Jesus is all about love, right? And so maybe we overweight, poll. Do we overweight to go, God is all about love, okay, which that's a topic for a different day, but do we sometimes discount his anger? What do you guys think? This is an open question. I don't know. Open question.
As we attempt to live that virtuous life for God, we need to know about the angry side, because if we don't do that deliberately, then it says in Scripture it's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of a living God.
If you ever had kids, right? You can always go back to having kids, all right? You love your kids, right? Absolutely love your kids, or your parents loved you. Well, if there was by chance you didn't do the right thing, or your kids didn't do the right thing, was anger ever involved?
Oh, yeah.
I thought so, but Dad said no.
But there was all about love. Your parents loved you. You love your kids. It's just all about love. What do you think? You're shaking your head over here. Tell me more.
So in as much as we see God and we know God is love, I'm sure you saw the expression on my face, which meant that there are times when you could get angry, but you need to also remember that though God is love, while he's angry, he still loves us, right?
Yeah.
So we don't tilt to the other side.
And God's anger is different than our anger. Our anger is mixed a lot with selfishness and, our own negative feelings or whatever. But God's anger is pure and it's with love behind it, I guess. I just think about, when you have a situation where, I know when I was younger, maybe high school or whatever, I didn't really get along with my brother, but one time I saw somebody picking on my brother, and that made me angry, and so it makes God angry when he sees people mistreating his children.
Anger, I think it has, I vote that I think it has a place. I think anger has a place in our virtuous life and our ability to discern. Remember, virtuous life is high moral standards, discern is being able to make good decisions. Okay? Anger kind of does what? It kind of shows you where you are on the guardrail, doesn't it? And when your mom or dad got really upset at you, did that deliver a message? My house, it did.
You've gone over the line.
Yeah, right away. It was like, you are not being very virtuous. You're failing the class in discernment. And it was right in your face. Okay, so let's keep going. So verse 7, there was kind of some anger going on here and some questions about discernment. The earth trembled and quaked, the foundations of the mountain shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils. Consuming fire from his mouth, burning coals blazed out of it. Was it just a little bit of anger? It was a lot, right? And remember, what was he angry about? Somebody was saying, the cords of death had entangled me, right? That's kind of how this whole thing started. Somebody was in distress, and then down here, the Lord is angry about it, right? Verse 10, He mounted the cherubim and flew and soared on wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, the dark rain clouds of the sky. Out of the brightness of his presence, the clouds advanced with hailstones and bolts of lightning. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. Isn't this what we all pray for? What do you guys think? What do you guys pray for? Would you pray for this kind of reaction?
See, we pray for our sin and we need a mercy. But God always punish people. That means the punishing is not anger. Because God want us to be on the right way. That's why God punishing. See, the parents punish kids. That means doesn't mean the parents don't have a love to the kids. Means if you don't punish your children, they can go to the wrong way.
Right?
So that's why the parents punish the children. That's not abuse. In America nowadays, they say, oh, you're abusing your children. No, actually, that's not abusing. If you give it to pat or something, it's not abusing. Because God, the Bible itself says, you punish your children, then only they get the right way. So that's why God punishes. So that's not, I don't think that is anger. That's because of He loves us. That's why He punishes.
You're right. And that anger is doing what? It is sending a message, right? It is sending a message that says, hey, check your discernment meter. Right?
That's discipline. It's discipline. It's not abuse, it's discipline.
Yeah.
You set the standard, you set the expectation, you set the boundary, you warn them they're getting close to the boundary, but once they go over the boundary, there's a consequence.
Okay, so let's move on to verse 16. This is where it gets good, right? Verse 16. He reached down from on high and took hold of me and drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. So it wasn't up to us to fight the enemies, right? This is a key part, and we'll get to it perhaps in a minute. The Bible doesn't tell us to go out and have fire in our nostrils, right? Punish our enemies. It doesn't say, you get out there and punish your enemies, right? Get busy. Come on. That's not what it is, right? He reached down from on high and took hold of me and drew me out of the waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were what? Who were too strong for me. So, being angry is left up to who?
God.
Should be left up to God, right? So I think where Danielle was a minute ago, in this whole equation, tough times, we're going to be in tough times. It's not our job to correct it directly, right? We're supposed to lay that at the foot of God, right? Let Him do the work, right? All right, we'll just finish up the chapter. Yes. Oh.
As you were reading this verse, especially verse 17, He delivered me from my strong enemy, from those who hated me. I was thinking about the verse in the New Testament that talks about we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but against principalities. So, we do receive stuff from people, but our greater enemy is the devil.
Right.
And He is going to get God's anger and wrath.
Yeah.
Maybe not right now, but it will come to him.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's move on. Monday's lesson was justice for the oppressed. Who are the oppressed? If you had to go today, who's the oppressed? That's a tough question, huh? Who are the oppressed?
Christians.
Who?
Christians.
Christians, yes, good answer. The Christians are oppressed, right? Christians are oppressed. Do you see that today, you know? Do you see Christians being oppressed today? What's one example?
We live in a different time with our own indiscipline, and we end up doing the wrong thing in front of God, and now we end up cannot even pay our bills, and we have so many anger from left and right, and even in a family member. So the press is there for a long time until God is coming back.
Okay, very good. All right.
Got one more, Bruce.
Oh, yep.
They made me walk across the room.
Okay.
That's right.
I think we live in a world where everybody wants to be pressed, and I believe there are places in this world where Christians are truly being oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
Not so sure it's happening so much here in America.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think Christians aren't preferred right now, and it's not the end philosophy of life. But I do look at things that are really happening in this world, and I think there's an epidemic of children being oppressed.
Yeah.
There is human trafficking, and we don't talk about it.
Absolutely.
And that's real oppression. That's the real things. I think those are the things that are making God angry. So maybe I'll stop there.
You know, that's a good, yes.
Okay, I'd like to add that sometimes we, in our different, spheres, feel oppressed, because you stand for the truth. Sometimes at our places of work, you stand for the truth, you're being sincere, being transparent, and you refuse to align with the world,
Right.
in quotes,
Right.
And automatically you get some negative energy from people, and then you become being oppressed. Sometimes it's via marriage.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might be relocating to a new country, and then because you're a Christian, you go to church, you're somehow looking perfect to people, you just suddenly, start getting that, oppression from,
Right.
from people.
Right, right. And maybe there's different levels of oppression where you go, human trafficking of kids, that's a huge oppression. Okay? Maybe at work that I'm not allowed to do something, maybe that's a medium layer of oppression. Huh? And I don't know what the bottom layer of oppression would be, right? But there could be gradients, right? All right, let's move on. We've got about 10 minutes left. We'll talk about justice. How about Psalms 9, 15 to 18? And the topic is justice regarding various vulnerable groups of people. So we just said kids being trafficked is a vulnerable group. If you think about the news today, who are the people who are vulnerable, and what's this text going to be talking to? Vulnerable groups. We said kids being trafficked, maybe kids in public school. How about for us older people? Who's vulnerable out there? Gen X is vulnerable right now. They've been they're in the social media trap where they don't have a lot of friends, right? And they're very, very vulnerable. Who else is vulnerable? Widows are vulnerable, absolutely. So we have a whole population of people who are vulnerable out there. So let's see what Psalms 9, 15 to 18 says. Good to see you guys. We left a spot open for you, and it is very good to see your smile. All right, Psalms 9, chapter 15. The nations have fallen into the pit they have dug. The nations have fallen into the pit they have dug. Their feet are caught in the net they have hidden. The Lord is known by his acts of justice. The wicked are ensnared by the work of their hands. The wicked go down of the realm of the dead, all the nations that forget God. All the nations that forget God. So this whole chapter, this whole bit in here is talking about what? Society and governments, maybe? People. But God will never forget the needy. The hope of the afflicted will never perish. Why is this in our lesson today? Governments around the world, right? Governments around the world. Let's not just, if we talk about our government, I think it could, we could go to different corners. So we won't do that. But governments around the world, okay? People are vulnerable there. Is that correct? And what it would be like to be a Christian in Ukraine right now? What would it be like to be a Christian in Israel right now? What would those feelings be? Be probably pretty terrible, right? You're living each day, right? Day by day. Look at all of what's transpiring in Africa. Christians don't have a very good time of it, right? But verse 16 in Psalms 9 says, God will never forget the needy. The hope of the afflicted will never perish. Let the nations be judged in your presence. Strike them with terror. Let the nations know they are only mortal. Okay, so let's move on. I think we just talked quite a bit about, well, let's talk about this topic, which was, I think it was, I've lost my place a little bit. I think it was Thursday, maybe. Leaders pervert justice and oppress the people they are tasked to protect. Okay, so we're going to move to Psalms 82. So the situation is leaders pervert justice and oppress the people they are tasked to protect. Now, that can happen anywhere, right? Your leaders, what happens to leaders? Leaders are elected, or leaders are kind of put in place to lead the people, right? And so what's the difference between a good leader and a bad leader? A good leader would embody what? Virtues. Very good. He would have a virtuous life. He would have good discernment, and that would reflect the ways of us. We'll just use us, this church body. Okay. A good leader would espouse that as they walk out the door and go to Congress. Okay. They would try to protect our beliefs. They would go, it's okay if these people in Brownsburg worship on Saturday morning. It's okay, and I will vote to the end to make sure that happens, right? That would be a good leader, right? Now, what's some of the characteristics of a bad leader?
As I like to do, the definition of oppressed is burdened by abuse of power or authority. And as we're going through the Psalms, this is how this applies to all of us, because just here in the United States, with election season right around the corner, a lot of us either hear on the radio, read it on our iPhone or iPad, or see it on the TV, elected leaders accused of doing this, that, and the other.
Right.
It's as though it's rules for thee, but not for me. And we're seeing abuses left and right, and we're wondering, where is the justice?
Right.
Does my vote count really for anything, or is it just a process where it has the appearance of that there's justice, but there really is not? Now, at this point, let me just share my personal opinion. Based on what we're reading here in the Bible and where we are, I believe that the Bible is showing that it is true, because we are seeing things that 25 years ago you would never see or hear about, but we're seeing it now. We are seeing abuse of power and authority, and at times I feel absolutely helpless, as though, can this and will this ever change? And the short term, no. Long term, we're hoping with Christ's return being imminent that all this will come to an end. It elicits anger from us, but the difference with our human anger and God's anger is when I get angry, bad words come out and things get destroyed. When God gets angry, he doesn't have bad words for us. He's pitying us, but at the same time realizing that punishment must come so we understand what's going on, which is the difference. We need to be like Jesus. If we go through Desire of Ages, we go through the Bible, how he was roughly handled, and for the most part, he didn't respond verbally to those who oppressed him, who abused him, who abused their authority over him. And I guess this is where we're at right now, is we're seeing the abuses, and we're saying, Lord, where is thy justice? And I think short term, we're not going to probably see that, because we're seeing sin fully mature and now acting out, and it's got us all caught up in that.
So a good leader is going to be one who is representing the people and the people's interest. Okay? The bad leader is going to be the one that is more self-interest, right? More self-interest. They've got their own self as their focal point, okay? So, Psalms 82, let's quickly kind of rush through Psalms 82. This is where God is looking at corrupt leaders and what the prayer is in that situation. We can talk about poor leadership in this country. We can talk about poor leadership all over the world, okay? We can talk about poor leadership in Haiti, correct? And so this would be the prayer for people who are under poor leadership, okay? Psalms 82. God presides in the great assembly. He renders judgment among the gods. Down to verse 5. The gods know nothing, the gods, it's not our God, it's the people in power here, okay, just so you understand. The gods know nothing, they understand nothing, they walk about in darkness, all the foundations of the earth are shaken. Verse 6, I said, you are gods, you are all sons of the Most High, but you will die like mere mortals, you will fall like other rulers. Rise up, O God, judge the earth, for all the nations are your inheritance. So under bad leadership, we're saying what? God is saying, these people don't know anything, right? He says in verse 5, the gods know nothing. They understand nothing. They walk about in darkness, right? What's the darkness that it might be? So if we think about poor leadership in the darkness, and we're saying that these leaders, these gods, walk about in darkness. What's that darkness? It's an easy question. Values of God, understanding God, God's love. They lead without that understanding, right? They lead without that. That's really the key point. These are leaders that aren't leading under a virtuous life, knowing God in that relationship. Those are the people that are ruling. They walk around in darkness. The foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, you are gods. You are all sons of the Most High, but you will die like mere mortals. You will fall like every other ruler. Meaning, at the end of the day, who's in charge? God's in charge, right? That's really what he's saying. You guys, you have a short tenure. You're leading people now, but you're leading them in darkness. Your day is coming, right? Your day is coming. Rise up. And so then the prayer, if you're in Haiti, you're going, rise up, O God, judge the earth, for all nations are your inheritance. It's saying, rise up. God, we need your help, right? Rise up. We're being led unjustly, right? So that's our prayer, right? That is our prayer. What do you think the people are saying in Haiti? What's it like in Haiti for people who are Christians that are being led in Haiti? What's it like? Is it really tough situation? More than tough, yeah. Yeah.
What I didn't see, I remember when Jesus time here in this world, and remember when the chief say, okay, let's relieve Jesus, and the people come and say, no, let's kill Jesus. He said, Jesus who make a blind can see, Jesus who you can die if you won't sacrifice him, release who? The guy who's he's been thief, who's been killing people? Yes, that's what we need. So today we're living in the same time. For the leader in this world, none of them and who in the government will stand for truth. From low to high.
From top to bottom?
Exactly.
Don't stand up.
So therefore, in a condition in a country where I was coming from, I was grow up in Catholic movement in Haiti, in school, and they have a very good education, but the way they teach you to save the master, and when you see the government each in the world, They just want to be controlled. In Haiti, they make a decision. Maybe you guys might know, maybe you don't know. In Haiti, you can select somebody to become a president. If United States government don't want that person, is not in his favor, is not going to be a president. If he do, 3-4 months later, they're going to give him coup d'etat, remove him from power, because the interest. The mankind we live in today, the interest. They do not see you, they do not see me. My interest. Give me all.
And for this lesson would be the prayer of the Christians in Haiti. They do have a way forward, right? But it's not through their elected leaders, right? It's through God, right? That is their prayer. Okay, let's close. We didn't quite get to it, but if you get a chance, read Psalms 132. It's the well-being of the righteous and the defeat of the wicked. So to end on a high note, it would be the defeat of the wicked would be Psalm 132. Okay, so when you get a moment today, read Psalm 132, and it is the defeat of the wicked. Okay, let's close with a word of prayer. Thank you, Lord, for a tremendous study today to remind us of who is in charge, who is the true leader, and remember those who are oppressed, the poor and the needy that we pray for. We can pray for ourselves, but we reach out to you for resolution and understanding. Be with us now. Amen. Thank you, everybody. Tremendous. Good participation. Excellent.